And here we are. Welcome back. This is the podcast that wanders and is lost. We might be lost, but we arrive precisely when we mean to, which, quite frankly, is very apt
Yeah.
for this show. I am your host, Melissa, and we are here with our episode entitled, If You Like It, Then You Should Have Put a Ring on It. We are recording on 11/6 of 2022, and we are going to be discussing Rings of Power Season 1, Episode 8, Alloyed. I am here with my panel of very esteemed co-hosts. Bailey, welcome. Happy
Hello.
season finale.
Yes. Happy season finale.
Luke is here.
I am. Thanks for having me back at my own house.
That's right.
Appreciate
your
you letting
house.
me be here.
And Riley.
Hey, I'm here as well in Luke's own house.
Yes, Luke's own house. All right. This show and all of our shows here at Drawbridge Media are produced with the love and support of our imaginary Legion patrons. Learn more about our reward tiers at patreon.com/stayimaginary. This episode was a whopping 1 hour and 12 minutes long. It felt longer, but it was 1 hour and 12 minutes. It aired on October 14th, 2022. We're just a little behind, but it's less than a month, so I'm going to call that a win. It was directed by Wayne Yip, and the writers were Jennifer Hutchinson, John D. Payne, and Patrick McKay. Luke, can you hit us up with the very detailed episode description?
This is going to take me a while to get through. Season 1 finale. New alliances are forged. That was it. That's what we got.
It was a description.
It described things.
It did. All right. We're going to start off as we do character by character, chunk by chunk. We're going to start off with the stranger et al. And Riley, what was the first scene in there?
Yeah, so we start in the Greenwood. The stranger is accosted by the three baddies in white who bow to him and call him Sauron.
So it's a way to kick off a show.
Yeah.
All right. What were your initial
Surprise!
thoughts? Initial thoughts on this revelation?
It solidified 100% that he wasn't
Yeah,
for me.
red
I was
herring.
like, there you go. Making it so blunt. No chance. I mean, there was no chance for me for a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
This just really nailed in the coffin. I was like, yeah, definitely not at all.
Yeah. There was no way they were going to start off the show with like that massive bombshell and it just be like, yep, that's it. That was the reveal.
Right.
So it's funny because the last time I was like, oh yeah, he's totally Sauron. Except, I mean, he can't be, right? He's too nice-ish. I don't know.
It's good.
He's good.
Well, but isn't it our choices more than our actions or than our personalities that make us what we are, Harry? I also questioned the three of them. They seem really scary, but here we are making the wrong call right away. So all of a sudden they lost street cred in my book.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that, really?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's kind of a red herring. And the three of them obviously believed he was something powerful. I'm interested to learn more about who they were and what they actually... I mean, obviously they are chasing Sauron, but why and where do they come from?
I really feel like it's been under detailed as to who these people are the whole time. We've just like seen glimpses of them. Like they never verbally received names at all. They just have titles that have been given in extra material, including the subtitles, but they're not spoken, so it doesn't really count. It's been really underutilized, underdescribed, in my opinion.
Especially for a show that I feel like in general
It's usually
has
pretty blatant.
explained things.
I agree with that.
All right. Ready to move on?
Yeah, not a whole lot there. Just kicking it off.
Really not. All right. Bailey, next stranger scene.
The three offer counsel to the stranger to remember who he is. It doesn't work well, but they decide to give him time. Nori and the gang pop up and sneak up to help their friend. Zadok takes a knife in the gut. A fight ensues where the Harfoots are attacked by fire. Nori reminds the stranger he is good. The stranger bids the three return to Shadow, and they realize he is not Sauron. Surprise! They are turned into ring wraith butterflies and destroyed. Our heroes discover Sadok is mortally wounded, and they sit with him as the sun rises.
All right, so we've got some re-exposition on who he is, although he's not, but he is. So, any thoughts on that first part before we get to the big battle-ish battle?
Riley looks like he's thinking.
I'm thinking, it's just interesting to me that they know for a fact he's the one that fell from the sky. Like, I guess they're really good at tracking and they can sense his power or something, but uh, I'm interested to see why they know about that. Like, it's just, I don't know enough about them to have, like, an opinion, I feel like. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we saw them find the landing spot,
Yeah.
right, and then have kind of followed the tracks. It seems like to track him down is so they're connecting dots, but it seems like they were clearly they saw this falling star coming in at some point, right? I mean, we saw just about everybody. We saw Ents see it, so it was a pretty prominent thing.
Only time we've seen an end.
I know. One Ent, one Balrog. I need more, but in general, I like that he's confused, but like it makes sense that they're like, the veil will be lifted over time. Like it's gonna take some more time. It's okay. He's like, what are you talking about? Like what veil? She's like, try to convince him. No, you're this thing. It's like speaking to someone who's going through amnesia of some sort, right? Or other memory loss type ordeals, and trying to convince them who you are, who they are, because you know more about them than they do. And that is a hard thing to fathom on oneself, I'd imagine. So it's interesting how they work around trying to convince him. And he definitely displays a lot of power. And they're like, maybe a little too much. Let's slow down. Hold the reins a little.
And it's nap time.
Right. Yeah.
So, what do you think about the Harfoots coming in and trying to support their friend or defend his honor?
Or just
Of?
help him escape.
Yeah.
I mean, I like it. They're showing that he's a part of their family in a way, so they obviously stayed true to their family and each other, so it's cool to see that they've welcomed him in and will fight for him, you know.
I liked that Sadak. Oh, go ahead.
It's gotta take a lot of courage as a tiny little Harfoot to like see these beings doing magic and still be like, yeah, we're gonna go try and save him.
On top of the fact that not only are they tiny little Harfoots, their entire life, like whatever, their world is around hiding and staying away. So it's that double edge of one, I'm not a fighter and I'm little and I'm whatever, but also it goes against everything I've ever been taught and learned and know in my world to step out like this.
Every bit of
anyway.
their nature, right? It's so specifically different. But we know that Nori has that. We know that she definitely is going to do it, but because she's doing it, I think that's what makes it easier for the rest of them to say, well, we're not going to let her, that's the loyalty part that they do have of, we're not going to let her take all of the risk. We're going to do this with her, even though it is out of our nature. We can't turn our back on her to be able to be a part of this. So I think that's the major reason why all four of them can work together in this. And they have a pretty good scheme, and let's take our chance where we know the one magic one isn't here. The only one that we've seen, burnt our whole village, let's take the shot when she's not here because it's better opportunity. I mean, better 2 than 3 because we've never seen them apart.
Right.
So made sense to me.
And then the stranger steps up. They kind of get blasted. They
Pretty
yell.
cool.
You like the blasting?
Yeah, I liked all the magic that he did. I thought it was pretty awesome.
We saw the ascetic, the one that ends up, they end up getting the stranger off of the tree, right? And it turns out that was actually, in disguise, the magic user. The ascetic is what she's called. And so that was like a dupe, right? The Harfoots, clearly their jig was up, and now all 3 of them are right there. And during this, we see Marigold finding the stranger, knocked out still. That's when this kind of turns real ugly for our har-footed friends. And, it's 3-on-3 at that point because Marigold went off to do the hooting and, hoot twice like a barn owl. So, yeah, I mean, they definitely walked into a trap. And luckily, the stranger comes in to protect them, right? That's kind of what we see. And he gets his butt kind of kicked, too, by the magic user. So, I mean, she does a lot of things that were similar to, like, what Saruman does with, like, the staff and, like, controlling the stranger's body, it seemed like. So it just seemed very familiar to, like, the fight in Isengard, in Orthanc Tower.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think that was done because she is of a similar like race, or do you think that was done for fan service?
I think all of it's done for fan service.
Okay.
To be kind of honest about it.
That's
what I think. We don't know anything about these people. There's nothing.
The way I view it is they're using what little magic we've actually been given in this series visually and, saying, okay, this is something that can happen and using that to make it more realistic and believable in this series.
Within the rules that we've seen.
within the world that has been created over the course of the 6 movies. And okay. Ring wraith butterfly dusting. Thoughts on the way we got rid of them or the fact that they're gone? Ish.
Bailey, any thoughts?
Good riddance for now? Question mark?
Yeah, I thought it was visually an interesting choice to make them look very wraithy. And there were a couple times where even when Marigold stabs the one in the foot, the hunter in the foot, it kind of has a wraithy scream, which just felt a little odd to me. It's using connective things like we were just talking about, but why? Like, that connection doesn't make sense to me. Like, as to how you can say, oh, they're somehow related to either the Saruman type Istari thing, or they're connected to wraithy type things. Like, I don't know. I found that one a little harder to swallow. I mean, it looked cool. I mean, I liked the look of it, but like conceptually, it doesn't really make sense to me.
One thought I had about like them turning wraith-like and like the butterflies flying off of them, I kind of imagined it as like the stranger has the power over physical matter, so he pretty much evaporated their bodies and transformed them into something different, but he didn't have the power to get rid of their souls. So that's potentially what we see left behind there, is their souls escaping and going wherever. But
no, it's there's at least something there.
yeah,
And maybe that's just what that magic looks like in the world. Like similar, like we're connecting magical dots to things that we've visually seen. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same idea. I mean, it's almost like, the Betrayer King too. The visuals on that were also kind of similar, not quite the same as Wraithy, but they're in this ballpark too. So maybe there's just a visual connection on this is what this kind of magic realm looks like in this world. So I can buy off on that, I guess.
sure.
And we know that elves have that same ability to live in both the wraith world and like the real world, because we've seen Galadriel do that in the Fellowship of the Ring. So if these beings are beings even with a little bit of that elven power, right? Not necessarily Istari power or wraith power. Like they really could be a race that lives in both. We just don't know. My big concern is, will we ever know?
I would expect so, and we can talk about that more towards the end of the episode. I think we get the term rune. We get the
Yes.
land of Rune is where they tell him he is from. They tell the stranger that's where he is from. It sounds like they're probably from there as well. And so with that door open, we may see other
Okay.
beings in this ilk.
Which I'd be fine with there being others.
Mhm.
Maybe not these guys coming back.
Right.
Any other thoughts about the 3 unknowns before we leave them entirely? All right. Poor Sadak.
Yeah, Sadak.
Kind of called it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
me, but we did.
We kind of
Someone had
saw
to
that
go.
saw that coming. Yeah. It definitely felt like he was the guy that would have to pass the torch on, like the way that they've used him this season. And it's sad, but that's how it goes, right? That's the nature of those types of characters. He's the Obi-Wan Kenobi for Nori and them.
Yes, and he also got the most screen time
Mhm.
outside of Nori's like close-knit
Right,
family. When it came to the Harfoots as a whole, he was, the head whatever person. And
The face of the Harfoots.
yes,
Right.
and if somebody has to go, they're not going to kill off Nori. If they were going to kill off her dad, they would have already killed him off.
Right.
He's the next best heartstring tug, if that's what you're going for.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's kind of the MVP for the Harfoots, right? He's the guy that has the knowledge. He's the wayfinder. He's the pathfinder. That's going to be a hard thing for them. They need to have something. It's unfortunate in stories you have to lose something though. And this group we just got the stranger back, so that's not really the case. You have to lose something to create tension moving forward, I think. And that's just what he felt like the natural choice.
Yeah.
Losing Marigold would have been sad, but it wouldn't have been as devastating to the group, let's be honest. Like,
Because there was not really narrative plot available.
other than, oh, that's Nori's mom. Like, is that good enough?
Yeah.
You know?
They have to have some reason to change their ways and develop into the hobbits. So
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Someday. All right.
It was a nice scene, though, where he's like, I just want to sit here.
Watch a sunrise.
Yeah, it was just well done. There were problems that we had with Sadok throughout the time. If is he withholding information? Like, how much does he know? Like, which are valid, but he was always well intentioned and a pretty good role model and a good leader. So it was a nice moment for them.
All right. Last scene with the stranger and the Harfoots.
The stranger and Nori discuss the need to seek out Rune. He translates the word Istari as wizard. Malva takes on the role of trail finder. And in the wake of losing Sadok, Largo and Marigold convince Nori to leave the tribe and adventure with the stranger. Goodbyes include advice and tears. The adventurers follow their noses as they set off. Toucan Sam style.
All right. My plan is to talk about this in 2 parts. Part 1 is just the plot and what happened, and part 2 is the background ideas that got embedded within some of the sound good?
Sure.
So, plot. We're setting off. But in factions. Is anyone surprised that Nori is going off with the stranger?
not at all.
No, I think we were pretty much calling that from the beginning. She
Said
doesn't.
that a while ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think Riley was the first one to voice it that she's not staying with. Like, she's got greener pastures to go find.
I think you said that in episode 1.
Yeah.
Like,
It was quite early that Riley was mentioning that for sure.
all right. Is anyone surprised that Poppy is not going with them?
A little, but I think what it does is it gives us reason to be able to pop between both groups moving forward. To be honest, I mean, I would have liked to, if Sadok didn't die, then she would be going with Nori, in my opinion, just narrative wise, because now we have Sadok that we can still jump back to. We can't just jump back to Largo and Marigold. Like, it's just
The rest of the Harfoots.
right. We're just
Right.
not as we're connected to them as a side piece to a very important character.
It's a side question. Your DM isn't there.
Right. But Sadok seemed like he had enough charisma that we could have jumped in and seen what they were doing following him to some extent. I hate to say that like the rest of them weren't good enough, but we just spent a lot more time. He's the only other anchor that we could have jumped back to narratively, I think.
All right.
I think also like I keep going back to like they're the ancestors of the hobbits, but I feel that like Nori setting out on an adventure develops what we know of like the Took family line a lot, and I think somebody like Poppy staying with the Harfoots and helping keep them alive and do the right things helps develop like the Gamgee line a lot.
Mhm.
Like whether or
And the
not it's actual,
Baggins
yeah,
and Gamgee. Yeah.
whether or not it's actually the direct family or not, but just those concepts and those ways of life, I feel like she embodies a lot of the traditional hobbits that we see
Hmm.
in the movies later on.
I think we spoke about this at one point when we were first getting to know the Harfoots, how what Nori does compared to the kind of status quo of the Harfoots is very much that dichotomy we see between Bilbo throughout his whole story,
Yeah.
right? And it's specifically Baggins versus Tukes, adventure versus lay low, keep it steady, be comfortable. And I think a good job putting that back up because that's the reason she can go off and do this adventure because you have to have two people for an adventure. You have to share an adventure. If you're
Alone, it's a
alone,
journey.
it's a journey.
Adventures, they must be shared.
Yeah.
That was one of the few things I actually wrote.
Gotcha. Yeah, I not surprised that they're splitting, in my opinion, and the way that's working, it makes sense because Poppy, we've seen how she can kind of, when it was just our small family and she stayed back with them and the stranger, it was kind of like when she started singing, it was able to get everyone's motivation back up. So like even right then, it was like, man, she does have this kind of skill to motivate and encourage people without, demanding things. It's lead by example and encouragement.
Bailey, any thoughts on Poppy versus Nori and their dynamic?
I think Poppy's always been a little bit more reserved and kind of just goes along with Nori's antics because she cares about Nori. And in some respects, I think that seeing everything that happened with Sadok and the Strangers kind of like brought her back into herself and made her realize that, maybe the Harfoot way isn't so bad. We do need to look after one another and so we don't lose each other again.
I also think Poppy is coming from a perspective of having lost, right?
Mhm.
She's been alone in a group, and I think over the course of the season, she has found her way back to not being alone, that she found a family, not just my best friend, but now they're my family, and I don't see her wanting to give that up yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like Nori's never had that kind of loss, so for her to go off and knowing her family's kind of off and safe, that's fine, but Poppy's been alone, right? It's
Mhm.
like being in a million people but not having anyone just for you, and now Poppy has Largo and Marigold and
Mm-hmm.
she's one of them. So
Yep, absolutely.
all right, any other, maybe the goodbye with the father and the things that he's taught her, and the goodbye with
I really like
Marigold,
that. Yeah.
the Largo part.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember what he said or what the
Yeah,
advice
the
was.
three things were always quench your fire with water and earth. Um, the last one, I can't remember the second one. The last one was a Harfoot without manners is as good as a square wheel. It will go as far as a square wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one was I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't quite remember. But he goes, I haven't even taught you
That was
a ruddy thing, and she's like, of course you have. It was a good moment.
that
for sure.
stuck out to me because I kind of envy that in Nori a little bit, where I know I've been taught a lot of things by my father and my family, and I don't always remember them. Like I'm really bad at that. I have to be taught again and again sometimes, and it frustrates me. So I was very envious of that. Like I just thought it was really cool that she knew whether or not it's probably not even close to everything that he's taught her, but
sure.
like I just thought it was cool that she held on to those things.
It was very much, it felt to me like more like the more is caught than is taught. Like these aren't things
Yeah.
that he sat her down and was like, I'm going to teach you this. It was very much, these are just things that he would say. And she's saying that was important to me.
I think for me, the scene with Marigold too. Oh, sorry. You
I
talked
remember
about
the
it.
other one.
Yes.
Don't squat near a river because you never know if you'll need a drink of water upstream.
Yeah. Practical stuff.
Like And I think sometimes as parents, you think, oh, I have to teach you the big things, when really it's those common sensey practical things
Mm-hmm.
like that, like the fire, the just, this is how you get through. That's the kind of thing that the kids need. And if you've done that as a parent, like you've done your job, it's
Mhm.
okay that you haven't passed on giant amounts of wisdom, because it's common sense that gets them through.
Sure.
Marigold's line of, Nori says to her, I'll be careful. And Marigold goes, no, you'll be bold. Talk about accepting your kid for who she is, right? And knowing that that's the thing that's going to help her be successful in her adventure. I liked that moment.
Even the whole reason that she had planned to stay with them, like accepting her so much, knowing that you need to go, even though you said you're staying, you need to go because that's what you actually need to be. Like the actual you is out there. You can't be you here to your fullest you-ness.
Yeah. We're holding you back.
And we're letting that be okay to let you go and do it.
That you don't need to worry about us to be you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought it was very heartfelt.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought they did a good job of getting pictures of everybody, with all the whole group, and it was a whole community feel to it as well, even outside of these nice micro moments. It's good stuff. The original spot where Poppy just like, okay, bye, because she couldn't do it. I thought that was a nice touch to where she was like, okay, cool, good luck, see ya, and like just goes away. It was a nice add to that relationship, I thought.
And then she runs after her.
Mhm.
I thought she was going to go with her. I really did. I had a whole Sam, I know you're going alone and
And
I'm
I'm
going with you. And then she didn't say that. And I was like, see, there's the ad I would have wanted to see, but I get why she's not going.
Yeah,
Okay.
if they hadn't done then you should be the trail finder like just before this.
Right.
Then I think that door would have still been open, but now she feels like, oh, maybe that is what I should be doing for this group.
Maybe I should go learn that from Malva.
Yep.
Yep. Are we ready to talk about how many different things we can drop into the scene and if they actually mean anything?
Sure.
Okay, Istari and Wizard. Let's start there, because that came first.
Okay.
Thoughts? Who is he?
Probably Gandalf. I don't like it, but
Yeah. I mean, I've been against the wizards being involved in any of this at this point a lot.
That's your hill, right?
I mean,
Not that it's a
I'm
big
not-
hill, but
it's a lot of people's big hill. It's
other people have other hills too.
other people have a ton of hills for this show.
I'm asking, is this yours?
Yeah, it's one that it was pretty obvious for a long time that this was probably, to me, it was there were a lot of indicators that this is probably Gandalf. I don't want it to be, but you just kind of have to roll into it and be okay with it being Gandalf, or just don't watch the show because it's definitely Gandalf. Like it just is.
So it's either going to be Gandalf or it's going to be Gandalf. So either way.
Right. You either get it okay with the idea of this is clearly not source material stuff. It's not the same timeline. And we've been dealing with that for a while now. The whole show. I mean, there are things that they've conjoined things. I'm not saying it makes it a bad show, but if you're set Cold Stone Creamery on it being we have to follow the original text, you will not like this show. You just won't. There are too many major deviations.
Yeah.
But the thing that I hold my hat on is I don't feel like it's lost the heart of what's important in these stories. That's where I'm like, I can go in that mentality and enjoy it for what it is and not be like, oh, this is a visual telling of all of the source material. It's just not.
All right.
And I'm okay
Bailey,
with it.
where are you landing on this? Is it Gandalf? It's probably Gandalf.
I mean, it's definitely Gandalf, right? Like that's what we have to believe now. Not knowing a bunch of the literature, like I'm okay with all of this because I haven't read the books yet. So I'm just along for the ride and whatever happens. So I'm not mad about it. I'm not happy about it. I'm just here to see who's who and who. I'm like, oh, I know you from a movie that I've seen.
I just
I'll
want to
get
throw
to a
out
book
there,
one day, but there's a lot of other books.
I was gonna say, like Bailey having not read something, I like there that's a very small list. So I
Yeah, I did The Hobbit when I was in sixth grade, and it was just
no.
extremely overwhelming as a sixth grader.
Yeah.
So I've been averse to reading them ever since. I'll get there one day.
All right. Riley, where are you landing? I know you're not happy about it being Gandalf,
Well,
but
I'm not so like I also haven't read this. I mean, I've read The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, but I have none of the source material for this story in my back pocket. That's not why I don't really care about the timeline. I just want to see a different wizard. Like I want to see somebody new. I want to see more of somebody like Radagast, who I said earlier in the story,
mhm.
like a more calm Radagast, but I don't know. I think it would be just really boring if I still think that there is a chance it's somebody different, but the main thing that points me towards it being Gandalf is his connection with the Harfoots and him always being there for the hobbits. So that's the main thing that really sticks out to me. I think he's going to play. They're going to join back up to again, whether it's at the end of the story or whatever, and he's going to help them build their first community, and he's just always going to be there, So it's probably him. I wish it was somebody different.
I wish it was somebody different because I don't like that we've never met the Blue Wizards. In general, I always have been curious about them. I'd like to know who they are and what they do. And they head off into the East and out of these stories is the only thing we ever hear about them. So it would be nice if, as he's heading to Rune in the East, maybe he could be one of them. So I'm holding out hope, knowing that I'm usually wrong, which is fine. I'm hoping against hope. If it's Gandalf, it's Gandalf. But if it's Gandalf, and we ignore the condensed timeline, there are textual evidence that proves that Gandalf could be this person without it being our Gandalf, because Gandalf the Istari has said to have walked Middle Earth many times before he came in the Third Age that Círdan found him. So there is technically a line somewhere in the depths of the unfinished something. 'Cause I don't know which one it is. I'm not great at the citing my sources, and I'm drowning in my dissertation, so I'm not going to cite Lord of the Rings stuff. But there is a line somewhere that says, and he had visited Middle Earth many times unseen, or something like that. Which, if only the Harfoot hobbits had seen him, right? If that's the only people he interacts with, and they never play into the histories of Middle Earth until we get to Bilbo, technically that would still fit that role, because as long as he doesn't interact with elves or dwarves or men,
and the other three that he's dealt with, he's literally vaporized them
right,
into
they're not writing history.
butterflication.
So I'm not, it's not as far against text as it could be. It still feels a little wrong and a little like, hey, we have this guy, we'll just pull him in. But I can defend it if I have to.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the kind of nails in the coffin in this scene here is when he says, "Follow your nose" to start the adventure. That's specifically something that Gandalf says to Merry in Fellowship as well. So it's just one of those another feather in the cap moments of, yeah, okay, he can wield fire, which contextually I still don't know if I believe that should be the case, but that's okay because he doesn't have a certain piece of magical items that potentially gives him that power later. Potentially.
Which could be why his magic seems a little out of control, because he doesn't have an item with which to, what's the word?
Focus.
Thank you.
Yeah, and when he used the staff of
Yes.
of the witch lady, the ascetic, he clearly was able to do a lot more with that at that
Right.
moment. So, yeah, that's fair.
Any other thoughts on the Harfoot journey?
I'm excited to see where they go. I think that's a fun twosome. You know, I really like them setting off. It feels very much Gandalf and Pippin. Like, it does, doesn't it? Like, you have one who's a little wily and crazy, and you've got a big, powerful. It's just a fun pairing. And I like Nori quite a bit, so I like to see her get her opportunity to be her full her.
All right. Bailey, last thoughts on the Harfoot story.
They have a fun dynamic, and I think that they're gonna have a lot of interesting encounters next season on their own.
Riley.
I'm just thinking on what you said about the possibility of it actually making sense with the lore, if that is true. If a massive wizard was going to walk Middle Earth and go unseen, probably best to do it with somebody who's been trained their whole life to stay hidden. So that makes sense to me, and I'm excited to see how that happens.
My big thing is I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bored by the Harfoots at the beginning of the series. I was not really invested in this whole like almost teen angst of Nori of like, this is my lot in life to live this life, and I don't want this small life that my parents have. But her growth has been astronomical this year while still maintaining strong family relationships, which I appreciate a lot. But I'm excited that she gets to go out in the big bad world and be the Nori that I've been waiting to see. So let's jump. This is a whole bunch of people. We've got the Galadriel, Halbrand, Elrond, Celebrimbor, and Gil-galad collection of people. The first scene starts with Galadriel rides in haste for help. Elrond and Celebrimbor discuss their options. Everyone is shocked by Galadriel's arrival. Halbrand and Celebrimbor bond. Halbrand gives some advice to combine the mithril with an alloy to amplify the qualities. So Elrond and Celebrimbor were discussing, hey, we're running out of time, and all of a sudden, bam, here comes Galadriel. Thoughts?
I like that they started immediately with the "what are you doing here" moment, because it would be easy for a watcher to not really think about, oh, yeah, like they think that she should just be like, we'll never see her again, like fundamentally, at least until we go off. But yeah, like I'm glad that they had that
What are
moment.
you still doing here?
Right. Yeah.
I feel like she didn't catch enough slack. Like, I feel like she went against the will of the king, and that should have been taken, like,
Addressed.
yeah.
Yes, especially given how much crap they gave her at the beginning of the series. And they're like, yeah, I came back. And they're like, cool, we're working on projects, right? That's what it felt like. And you're like, what did you, who? Yeah. So
So there's no punishment for just jumping off the ship and not going where you're supposed to go. Cool.
right. Oh, so, and then she brings a human man person, and they're all like, who is this guy? And she's like, oh, it's cool. He's a king. And they just like take her word for it. I don't know. I think there was a lot of
Jumping. They were obviously trying to get to somewhere. Felt very rushed.
which is funny because again, up until now, the show has been a slow roll of lots of exposition. So here we are jumping over things that maybe we shouldn't. I don't know.
And I'll try to be like, I think that's been a big problem for me with this episode in general, is that it feels so different from the rest of the series for me. Like, they jump through a lot of stuff during this section of characters, and obviously they're trying to get to something, but it feels like there could have been a whole nother episode. I'm not saying like I wanted it to drag out further, but like
For the pacing that the show has been.
it just doesn't seem like it fits as well.
They had to get too much in with just this one episode
Yeah.
left. Yeah.
Well, do you think they could have been better served by condensing some of the stuff earlier to have some of this spread out, like over the last episode and this one a bit? Like, do you think they could have changed some of the pacing earlier to get all of the same things done, but, you know, have us care the same about some of these big things?
Yeah,
I
less
guess.
Numenor.
I mean, kind of, and less Raft.
Yeah.
Not that those things weren't important, but they weren't maybe whole episode worthy.
I think they were designed like strategically designed for an episode viewing experience rather than what the story required.
I'm wondering if we'll get more streamline now that we have the rings, because you had to get there,
Yeah.
right? All right.
And we had to understand getting the mithril was a lot of what we spent a lot of time doing too. Like, we all loved, I was going to say Orzammar, but all of the Dwarven Moria stuff. But some of that could have been handled quicker, you know. But I like this episode a bit. But I can understand the pacing is a little they're condensing things down a lot when it could have been maybe an hour and a half.
Right.
Maybe
an
that's what you
extra
did with
5
it.
minutes of her getting yelled at by Gil-galad at some point, or her actually explaining why she did it rather than just, I did it because it was right for me. I
Yeah.
a little bit with
I didn't
Elrond.
feel worthy.
Yeah, I can agree.
Yeah,
I'm a
and
little.
especially-
Go ahead. Sorry.
Like, it's a streaming show. You know, we're not, this isn't regular cable where we're confined by, 42 minutes and the rest of it is commercials.
Mm-hmm.
You can make your episode as long as you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anything else to add, because yes, give us a little bit more of what we saw from them, how they dealt with her at the beginning, because we didn't see them make the shift to then treating her like an equal that happened in the rest of this episode.
Especially when she specifically now has gone against what the king's wishes were, like specifically. And he seems to be a guy that gets his way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he seems very entitled to, well, I mean, he's a king. So what he says should go. And this is specifically an order that is gone against, right? And not only that, she's been kind of gone rogue, and they don't know it until right now.
Right.
And they're just kind of like, cool.
And she's had this whole adventure.
We
Right.
got stuff we're working on though, so get
Right.
on board.
Yeah.
She made friends. She survived a volcano. She went to Numenor. Like, she did some stuff, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's seen things.
She's been places.
I need a nap. Especially because she rode for 6 days without stopping to get there. Let's talk about Halbrand. 6 days to get there because he was dying of a knife wound, and
Magically is good in like
magically
2
it is
minutes.
good.
Even before that, I was like, well, I mean, I've been on the he's Sauron thing for
You
a
have.
while. And as soon as she says we rode nonstop for 6 days, I'm like, that should be a red flag for everyone that he's even alive for any reason.
And doing as well as he is.
Yeah, even him being able to walk in under his own, like, that's not a man thing. No man, no human could do that. Aragorn could not have done that. No way. That should be something that Elrond is like, now say that again? Someone help him, but like tie him to the bed, like chain him down, because something's not right here.
And they were likely distracted by the fact that, wait, you're still alive and you're here. So I wonder if not only were they like, so I'm Elrond, right? Or even worse,
Hey, welcome to
Celebrimbor.
the show.
And I am super stressed out because I'm trying to do this thing with this little amount of stuff, because I have somehow invested in the fact that without this stuff, our whole race will die. Still don't understand that, but cool. I'm suspending belief, and yep,
Right.
right.
Yep.
Because a leaf gets healed by this, obviously the elves will die without it. Okay. So
Buy
I'm
into
stressed
it.
out
Just buy it.
and I have to get it done in like a week and a half or something, and nothing is working, and I'm very stressed, and all of a sudden, my best friend, who's literally supposed to have gone to another plane of existence, shows up at the front door with like her man toy. So I'm a little distracted. I don't worry about the man toy
Sure.
because, from the perspective of an elf with that level of stress, humans are not of import.
Right. No, that's fair. I can get behind it on that side, but me watching, I'm like, man, 6 days, big red flags in my book. Like, if you weren't on the he's a little suspicious train at
But
that
to an
point.
elf, what's 6 days?
It's true.
I know. I don't know, but I mean, I get it. It could be an elven ignorance thing, and they're distracted by all the. Totally fair.
I'm just arguing the devil's advocate part of that. I'm not necessarily saying I thought of that at the time. It's more, sure, let me spin it in a way that could make sense. But then Halbrand, who is magically all better, right? Wow, those elves.
Shouldn't you be resting? What is this place? Okay.
Like, all of a sudden he's this, oh, I'm a humble smith, but I have these ideas.
And he knows Celebrimbor. Like,
He knows of him, yeah.
yeah, of him. Like, how? I don't know. I feel like it's a pretty long distance in.
Oh, he said, my master told me of him.
The master that I apprenticed with.
Yeah.
Which is not a lie.
No, he doesn't lie much.
No, because Celebrimbor is one of the sons, is a son of the sons of Feanor. The 7 sons who had sworn an oath against Melkor / Morgoth,
Mm-hmm.
who is who Sauron apprenticed to. So, true statement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He definitely butters Celebrimbor up, right? To get past the, how are you okay?
What
Like,
does it
he
just
just
say?
starts
You're here?
stroking his ego, right? He just basically like, wow, this is amazing. Like, oh, is he here? Well, yes, of course he's here. He's me. Of course I
Okay,
know
Obi-Wan.
him. Of course I know him. He's me. Oh, yeah. And, clearly they start this, relationship on this passion project. And it's just, man, like, he takes the mithril. He's like, what's this? What's this? Cool. And, yeah, Celebrimbor is just eating it up, right? Because as soon as he says, well,
Hook, line, and sinker.
pretty much. I mean, this is exactly what Halbrand's plan has been for a while.
Since he wasn't able to stay on Numenor.
Oh, yeah.
Never
Let me
trusted
feed you these small
Celebrimbor.
nuggets of useful knowledge so that you may help my purpose.
And he does it in such a humble way, doesn't he?
He's like, well, I'm sure you've probably already thought of, right? He's that kind of guy. I'm going to make it seem like it's your idea.
Where I'm from, we didn't have precious gems, so we had to really stretch out the stuff that we had. Let's take that mentality. Maybe you went already through this. I don't know.
I haven't been here.
Yeah. He hook, line, and sinker was well. He worked him right over real quick.
All right. Are we ready to jump to the next scene? All right.
I think so.
Riley, I think that's you.
Celebrimbor tells High King Gilgalad of the plan to embed all the power into one small object, to be wielded by the king. Gilgalad rejects the plan and orders everyone to return to Lindon. Elrond asks for one more try using Gilgalad's own words, "Hope is never mere," against him. Galadriel starts some covert investigation into the line of the kings of men. Halbrand thanks Galadriel for helping him to get to places he never thought possible, and he promises no one will ever forget her help.
So Gilgalad, whatever.
Gilgalad.
Gilgalad. He's not so happy with the plan.
Mm-hmm. I don't see why.
Talk about that.
I don't know why he doesn't like their plan. Like, oh, somebody has a solution. No,
Too little, too late.
stupid.
We gotta move.
Like, at this point, you have no hope left, so what does it matter if you try, like, your Hail Mary?
What do you think, Melissa?
So I'm trying to think about it from the perspective of a leader of people. Because Elrond and Celebrimbor and Galadriel are looking at it from the perspective of idea people and doers. Whereas Gil-galad is, I have to care for my large group of people who trust me to make the right choice for everyone. And if I allow you to keep doing this for as long as you want, at what point is it too late for me to save them and get them to Valinor? Because I could at least get them there.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I think that's what they meant, but if I were the leader, that would be my hesitation.
That's what I feel like it is. When he says, you know, it's too late, we should have had this weeks ago. If that was the case, then we should have been working on this already. Like, I think he feels like we're already past the point of no return to where he has to, and he even says, like, I'm still taking all these people moving at least towards Lendon, which is kind of the jumping off point towards the sea. But so he's trying to make those maneuvers, and he just feels like it's just too late to make this a viable thing. Even if it somewhat works, how long is it going to take to figure that out? But Elrond definitely jumps in and you know, politicizes it up a little bit more. He uses that charm and gets a little bit more time.
I'm a big fan of the throwing back at him the words that Gil-galad used on him, and I think it was episode 2. Hope is never mere. And it was like, psh, right there.
Yep. Absolutely.
I don't know. Do we side with Elrond or do we side with Gil-galad?
Well, Elrond. It's my guy.
Of course.
It's my guy.
All right. I mean, I do, but I think Gil-galad is played too harshly for what I think he is actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be a little more nuance and like.
We usually only see him in bad light. Not that we
Right.
think he's a bad guy, but he's not.
I don't like him.
You don't like him?
No.
And I think that's
He's
fair.
always making tough calls.
Right. And I'm saying you don't like him because of the way he's played. And I think that could an easy tweak, and he could at least be sympathetic in his calls we don't
And
agree
less
with.
less aggressive on
Yes.
his things. Not that he's over the top, but he's very much fundamentally, you know, gavel down. This is it, judgment. And a lot of times we disagree with the judgment is a part of it too. But he definitely has to just like stop messing around. Like, this is what it is because I'm saying that's what it is now.
He's also the only character that we have not seen any kind of personal side to, because even Queen Regent Muriel and Galadriel and Nori and Durin and Elrond and even Halbrand and the elf who we haven't seen in 2 episodes, right? Like all of them have moments of doubt or self-reflection or just, and we haven't seen the personal side of Gil-galad. We've only seen him in his I am the leader and I have to make these choices role. So maybe that'll be something we see as the series goes on, a little more of the side of him, of just who he is as a person, elf, as opposed to who he is as the king of the elves.
So during this, trying to convince Gil-galad to, you know, do this project, Celebrimbor drops some interesting keywords here, you know, not a power of flesh, but a power over flesh. And Galadriel's like, that sounds questionable. Sounds a lot like something our buddy Adar just told me when I had him chained up, too. That's what Sauron was working on. That's a little close to home. Like, within 6 days, a week ago, I heard this.
Right.
Was Halbrand with you? Because...
Where did you hear that?
Right, like that's pretty suspicious. And immediately she gets on the, okay, well, let's get through this meeting, noting that to look into, because that sounds like a totally different thing than I thought we were talking about. And I like that they show her immediately kind of balking at that, just, you know, like to herself, but like realizing that okay, there's something else is afoot, and it might not be the most well-intentioned thing going on right now.
Is that what chipped her off? Because man, I missed that twice.
Oh, 100%, that's what it was. Absolutely. Because then after Gil-galad leaves and Elrond goes after him, she asks him, "Where did you hear that?" And he was like, "Well, we were talking to my smiths. I think those were my words." Those aren't his words.
So I remember that part, but I didn't remember where she had heard it before.
Oh,
Me
Adar.
either.
Yeah, Adar, for sure.
Okay.
Because he was saying that's what Sauron was working on. And I killed Sauron. And that's where he's like, "I don't believe you on that." But it kind of skips over. She doesn't spend much time on, "Oh, Sauron's doing bad, evil things." We get that. But you didn't kill him. Like, that's kind of the way that scene
Okay.
goes. And so it was very subtle. It was one of the times they've went more with subtlety. And they did show that scene in the previously on, too.
Got it.
So it made it a little quicker
Okay.
to at least portions of that scene to allude to it.
So she's investigating.
Yep, goes into, seems like an archive, talks to an archivist elf, and he's like, "That's gonna take a while." She's like, "I know, get to it." Like, I want to know everything about the Kings of the South.
I don't know what you're waiting for.
Right, you have your orders, let's do it.
Don't worry. We'll time hop until you're done.
Right.
So let's talk about the conversation with Halbrand. When he's like, "I just never thought I could get here. Wide-eyed, little kid, big eyes."
Oh yeah, he doesn't lie in this moment either.
No.
Everything is truthful.
And everyone will remember how I will always remember how you helped me get here. And I'll make sure no one ever forgets it either.
Yeah, I think my favorite part was when he's that wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, and he goes, "Wow, someone like me here." That was my favorite part, because it was just like, yeah, this is exactly what he's been working towards for a long, long time. And that's what he was trying to do in Numenor, is trying to, okay, let's do something where I can get in with the smithing crew, but oh, wow, let's work with Celebrimbor. Like, that's a couple steps up. Like, I can't believe I found myself here.
I can do
Someone like
something
me.
here.
Yeah, I can work with this. Yeah. And-
So, do
ahead.
we think we're gonna get more? Because I don't know the history of Sauron, the character, other than obviously what we've talked about. He was an apprentice to Morgoth and was doing evil stuff. And do we think we're gonna get more history from Halbrand and figure out more of like where he came from, like what kind of race he is, or is that all already known, I guess?
In the show, it's not. We just know, well, go ahead.
So I was going to say, we know what race he is. He's the same race as like Gandalf.
Okay.
So Maiar.
But what I want to know is
And the Balrog,
from the
too.
fall of Morgoth till now, what has his journey been like for him to be feeling like, I want to do good? Because in his mind, he does. But it's good on his terms. Almost like Ultron,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to jump to the next scene? Because that's when we get into a little bit more
Sure.
of the... And the next few are several kind of back to back to back. So... I think
Bailey, you're reading that one.
Bailey, yeah.
Yep. Celebrimbor's experiments with Mithril are explosive. Celebrimbor and Elendil argue, and Galadriel counsels rest.
Probably
Halbrand
not
takes
Elendil.
that advice.
That was my mistake.
Elrond.
That's probably true.
Halbrand takes that advice and applies it to the work. Stop using force, use coaxing to encourage the metals to bond. Galadriel receives word on the broken line of the Southern Kings and confronts Halbrand to tell who he really is. Halbrand takes over her mind.
And that whole scene will be
Discuss
next.
next. It's just more of the
Yes.
confrontation.
So let's do the metal and Halbrand's suggestion.
He knows a lot more than he should.
He's got great ideas.
He's not wrong.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, if people haven't just bought in that it's definitely Sauron, like, I don't know, like, you're really trusting the looks fairer and feels fairer. No, he looks fairer and feels fouler. That's very much just like, okay, if you're not picking it up now, you might want to read subtitles a little bit further, I guess.
Recalibrate your internal compass.
Right.
You know, some people might just be naive enough to like
Man,
trust.
I wish
and
I
be
would.
kind.
I wish I was sometimes. You were?
I was.
You were still in
But
at the
I have
point?
been Team Halbrand. Remember,
That was the point. They wanted you to be Team
know, and
Halbrand.
I'm
He
totally-
wants you to be Team
Here's the
Halbrand.
thing, this is just the Melissa thing about reading books and watching movies and watching TV shows. I will happily be the naive person just watching it to watch it. It doesn't matter how many times I've read Lord of the Rings and all of the lore that I can get my hands on. I have. It does not matter that I am unhappy with the fact that that's Gandalf just because I don't want it to be Gandalf. But in the moment, watching it the first time, I'm just a little kid who wants to see explosions and car chases, right? I'm just happy to watch. I'm just happy to be here. And he is my favorite character in the whole show. He just is. I know that was done on purpose, but I'm fine with being manipulated that way. I'm totally okay with it. And I'm not necessarily changing my opinion at the moment that he's my favorite. I'm just saying.
I almost like him more because of how he's gotten here. I almost appreciate the way they've done it because it was slick. It was good. But if you knew, it became more and more like there was just more and more and more and more and more pouring it on pretty thick after a while. But
So anything else about the bonding of the metals?
makes sense. I mean, I guess it just gives them another opportunity to, he says we used enough force here to fuse the heavens and the earth, and it's like, okay, well then clearly you're going the wrong way, and I don't know. It is a pretty just like common sense, like, okay, let's try something completely different. Like, let's just brainstorm a totally different avenue. Obviously, of course, it's a little suspicious that he's the one that specifically brings it up again and
Right.
again and again, but he does it so smooth and humbly, and
I'm just happy to be here, guys.
like, what about this? Like, this is just a thought. Tell me if I'm being crazy.
And we're meant to believe that he's, dealt with alloyed metals in the past. So he has experience. It's not something that's completely out of left field for him to potentially have a suggestion.
Yeah, certainly.
So moving on to the confrontation at the river's edge.
Going to the zoo, huh?
Oh,
Oh man, there you go. So yeah, does she go down there and he follows her?
she goes down there to read
The
the
page
scroll.
the scroll that was just
And
delivered
he
to her.
comes and she puts it behind her back and is talking to him. And he's talking and he's like, oh, I did. And she's like, tell me she throws it at him and says, tell me who you are.
You know who I am. No.
You big fat liar.
Right.
And then his line is, and his whole voice changes. I've been awake since the break of the first silence. In that time, I've had many names.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, and here we go. I liked that moment. That was my favorite moment, I think. Yeah. And of course, Galadriel gets huffy.
Gee, it's Huffy.
Yeah.
It's like, eh.
Which, I mean, rightfully so, right?
I mean, she literally just found out that this is the guy that she's been trying to track down for centuries.
And
And
I saved your life.
Right. I love how. Can we just jump into the next scene as well? Because I think at this point,
Sure. Unless, Riley, you have anything you'd like to add. Great. Go ahead and jump into the next scene for us, Luke.
So Galadriel is thrust back. No, yep. Thrust back into her memories. Finrod reappears while she demands Halbrand get out of her mind. We jump back to the raft, and Halbrand describes being free of Morgoth and wanting to heal the world in order to be worthy again. He proposes an alliance partnership. She refuses and ends up back in the water drowning. So, like, throughout this whole thing, this is where it really solidifies his name is Sauron the Deceiver, because everything he's doing is to just slightly split the truth in a way that's believable, but also colors things in a different light to where you can almost see that maybe she can get on board with this, and maybe we can kind of get there and work together for healing Middle Earth. And it's just like bullshit, 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 right? And I love the way they play this character through here. And obviously Finrod is just a face that Sauron is using here, but I really like the way they did this to show her susceptibility into falling into the want to help, right? Because I think you kind of mentioned it, Sauron apparently has good intentions. Halbrand has good intentions for what he's doing. They're not the same thing that we would call a good method to get there, which we don't exactly know what that means at this point. But we know that he worked with the big baddie of all time so far. He learned from him. And he even tries to pull that card of, I felt like a hand had unclenched on my throat and I could finally see the world for how it was. Like once Morgoth was kind of out of the picture. Like he's saying all the right things, right? He's saying all the right things. I'll stop there. There's a lot of interesting pieces throughout here, I guess.
I want to watch the show where she says yes.
Yeah.
To be honest, I want to watch that. That would be very interesting to me.
It'd be interesting.
Bailey, any thoughts?
It's got to be so frustrating to be Galadriel and to have gone through all of these things and to realize that the one thing you've been looking for has been literally in front of you for months, probably at this point.
Could be. I mean, with the Numenor stuff, I'd say it seems like it's been a little while for sure.
And the amount of trust they've built up together, and
Yeah.
you saved me, I just paid you back. Now you saved me, now I paid you back. Like there's a bond. There really is a bond there.
And that's what makes it tough
And look
around
at
her.
how well we get along, and you could do good things with me, Galadriel.
So he says, "You bind me to the light, and I bind you to power. Together we can save this Middle Earth." And she questions, "Save or rule?" And he responds, "I see no difference." And that's what breaks it for her. Because up until then, like, if we're really here to save,
Yeah, I mean,
I could maybe buy in.
Yeah, and on that, before you put the nail in that, she's like, you would make me a tyrant. He's like, I'll make you a queen, not dark, but beautiful, stronger than the foundations of the earth. Did anyone pick up on those lines? Yeah, those are specifically very similar things to what she says to Frodo when he offers her the ring. She specifically harkens back, which is obviously where the show was pulling this information from, to see like that. In that moment in Fellowship of the Ring, she says, I passed the test, because that was the ultra power that's being alluded to here in this moment, that she is able to say no again.
Yeah.
Is what it kind of turns into. It was, again, they're pulling from the material that they can use and setting that seed to be like, that's a thing. She did it. She said the thing.
I will tell you that I totally bought into. I liked that because it made sense for her character to have this temptation and then to have it come back to her when she thought she had put it behind her. So I get that. I didn't like all the connections with Gandalf in the Harfoot stuff. So I felt like this episode in general is very heavy-handed with the connections. We had heavy-handed stuff early in the series, then we kind of got away from it, and I feel like we're
There's been a
bringing it all
lot
back.
in this episode.
And I didn't like it as much, except for this part, because I felt like it was true for her character.
Absolutely makes sense for her character. If this is where her character has gotten to with this Sauron connection, which we don't really know if there's any of that really before the show, I should say. At least it sets a course that makes just narrative sense as to who her character is for the rest of time.
Right.
And I think too, like in the Hobbit movies, when she leads the, you know, because in the book Hobbit, we just get this alluded to thing of Gandalf going, look, I just fought the necromancer like off in the woods. Like, I'm sorry, I was doing a thing. That's why I wasn't here. And that's all we get of the necromancer fight that Gandalf is off doing when he's not with Bilbo and the dwarves. But in the movies, we see the scene and Galadriel's there and takes lead on the fight. I think it also ties back to that fight. I think
Sure. I wasn't even thinking about that.
The warrior Galadriel that has been up for debate, I like that she was like, we have a tie to that into The Hobbit. And then we have a tie to that draw of power later on. And then she's finally now ready, right, in Lord of the Rings to say, I will fade. I will go into the West. Thinking about how she wasn't worthy now. I get it. Fan service. We're pulling in.
But I think it gives a lot more depth to her character over time.
And it's a through line I can buy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a big fan of it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Any other thoughts about the weird flashback? Get out of my mind. Is this all happening? Is this real or is this happening in my mind?
One thing that did stand out to me for that was you can see him like on the boat grabbing at the dagger as if he knew that was the key of like what they needed.
Just that unique metal, that pure high purity.
Yeah. That was just interesting to me that he was like grabbing at the dagger, and I don't know if it was just to defend himself or.
Well, he even, as Finrod talks about that, oh, my dagger, you kept it all this time. Like, wow, thanks. Like, that's cool. Like, you know, getting in, trying to convince her that this really is her brother. And, you know, it's interesting that it uses the Finrod character to really kind of throw, you know, the first axe swing into chipping this armor. And then he just like slowly starts kind of like peeling it open a little further and further the whole time through other methods too. But like she really does end up buying into, she's talking to Finrod for a little while, like very much. And you can see her being confused and like, this can't make sense, but she wants it to be right. You know, she wants to have time with Finrod some more. And like to have like the accolades, like, I'm proud of you for doing this. Like thanks for doing this for me. But my intentions are different than what you always thought they were. I wasn't trying to kill Sauron. I found out that he was trying to save the world. Like, and it just, using that angle, I thought that was a smart to one of the first scenes that we see in all of the show, right? And showing where her overall arc, if you want to call it that, through this season has been based off that moment and that following scene where we found out that he's dead. So it was just a smart thing to bring it back to there. And then I guess to the raft as well, to where her and Halbrand first met each other. So interesting. I didn't see it coming this way, but it makes a lot of sense, I think, for where the characters are and for what we know about them through the show, at least.
Last thoughts on the mind. Bailey, any ideas? Any other things to throw out there?
No, I think we touch base on all the things I was thinking.
All right, so I'm going to jump to Elrond's voice brings Galadriel back. Elrond comforts Galadriel, who then races back to Celebrimbor. Galadriel warns that no one should treat with Halbrand again, but gives no reason why. She then demands they make 3 of whatever they're making to provide balance, because 1 corrupts, 2 divides, but 3 is balance. Celebrimbor reveals he needs pure gold and silver from Valinor. Oh, just like in Galadriel's dagger.
Whoa.
Oh. There's your Chekhov's gun.
Right.
All right. So Elrond calls her back, and first thing she says is, tell me something only you would know. Because at this point, she doesn't know if it's real or not.
Oh, yeah. That'd be another great character for Halbrand to use, right?
It's very tough to, when something like that happens to you, find something to really latch on that's real.
Find your
100
anchor.
Yeah, because when things start becoming real to you that aren't, then everything seems not
Everything's worth questioning.
real. Yeah.
At that point.
Suspicious.
Yeah. I think that's fair, and I like that he doesn't like get upset. He's just like, okay, yeah, like let's, boom, here you go. You found me on the shores. Half health. You gave me water. You basically saved my life. Good enough? Like, we good?
Right.
We cool?
Do you need more?
Convinced?
Yeah, and he respects her, and he doesn't belittle her and be like, what are you talking about? Like, he just gets right into, okay, here we're at. Let's get to the same platform now. And then she's like, where's Halbrand? And he's like, I don't know. I haven't seen him. Was he with you? Like, what's going on? What? She like books it. He's like, what's going on right now? Why was she sleeping in the water? And why is she running away, being really confused?
Where are we going, and why are we going so fast?
I thought we were cool with Halbrand. Like, I thought we were primo. Like, I thought that's a good thing.
So
He was helping us.
It's like that Nicolas Cage meme where he's like looking back and forth.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the whole, oh, by the way, that Halbrand guy, we totally don't like him anymore.
Yeah, no,
that
he
like
is
a Mean Girls
out.
moment. Or
He
it
is
just-
out.
He can't sit with us.
No.
Yeah.
And you are not to treat with him.
That's funny.
And they're like, okay, like, why?
Can you tell us why?
No.
Is anyone surprised that she doesn't just come out and say, he's Sauron, apparently? Like, my bad?
I think she's trying to protect herself a little bit.
Well, because he even said,
She doesn't want to admit to being that foolish.
yeah. And even in the conversation with Halbrand on the raft, he mentions that he's going to go, you're going to go back and tell them that we were allies. And that's, that we were working together. And they're going to think that you were with me the whole time. Like, that we set this whole, like, so it's not in her best interest for them to open that door right now, as opposed to, let's get this other information out first. We could open that package later.
So my thinking, although I think rightly you're right. So it's probably because she doesn't want that level of responsibility put on her of like, wow, so you were like really wrong about that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Also, back in episode like 1 or 2, whenever they were sending her off, Gil-galad and Elrond had the conversation about the dream about how Galadriel was going to be the one who brings the doom or whatever upon, and that by sending her off, they were trying to avoid that. Well, here she is fulfilling that prophecy, so they don't need to know that yet. But watching it, I assume she wasn't telling them because she didn't want to stop the process. And that could be my own like bias or story, headcanon I'm throwing on there. But is it possible that if she goes back and says, hey, this happens, everybody stops what they're doing and goes off and searches for him instead of actually creating this thing that they need to make? So she didn't want to interrupt whatever they're doing because that was more important at the moment.
Probably.
Yeah.
Which is very un-Galadriel of her.
I could see it being both.
Yeah.
It's a little
Yeah.
self-serving and not admitting that she was wrong and she had poor judgment. And it's also, no, there's something, like I need to change what you're doing right this second. So I'm not going to give you this information that could potentially halt the process altogether. Let's continue here. And then maybe I'll tell you where I messed up.
And even a third piece of that, which is kind of on the first one, the kind of selfish protecting, but it's more of, this is a pretty fresh wound too, because this has got to hurt. This kind of betrayal, specifically to her, that's got to be emotionally difficult. So let's not just throw that barn door wide open and say, here, let's air out all this dirty laundry real quick. Like, I need to process this because we got a bigger fish to fry. But I just can't even talk about that right now.
In some aspects, I'm sure it's shock. Like,
Right.
she's just
Mhm.
going through the motions of, okay, I have somewhat of a solution to what's going on here. and I'll process everything else later.
Compartmentalizing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep.
All right. Riley, can you hit us up in the last part of the Galadriel story?
The millennia-old dagger gets melted down, then smithing happens. While waiting, Elrond searches the river and finds the proof of Halbrand's non-kingship. The rings are forged.
It was a lot of smithing.
It's cool.
Yes. But it was smithing. I had nothing else to say. I'm sorry.
I enjoyed it.
I did. It was time that could have been better spent elsewhere, potentially.
I'm not even saying that I mean, maybe. I didn't know how to summarize that.
Oh,
Like, it was like 5 minutes of smithing.
yeah.
Smithing.
This is just one of those. It's eye candy
Yeah.
more than anything. I mean,
Yeah, visually intriguing just for the point of being pretty.
and well, visually important because it's also specifically the name of the show. This is the first time we've
Had to
actually
happen.
seen what the hell are the rings of power. Like, this is the first allusion to that at all.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take the time to really show this really beautifully shot of jewelry crafting. They look cool, and I thought it was shot interestingly. I mean, that's all it is, though. It's just to look cool, but it is important for the story.
Yes.
For sure.
Hard to summarize.
I agree.
I mean, unless it was like step by step. Like
I was
the
gonna say,
daggers
unless you
melted
know
down
your
and
your
no,
jewelry working well enough.
no.
Yeah,
I have a very specific skill set,
and that's not on that list.
Nope. So let's talk about Halbrand finds the proof that, or not Halbrand, Elrond finds the scroll floating in the water. Now he knows that Halbrand is not who
And it's not
Halbrand.
damaged?
It's waterproof papyrus. I don't know. Elf paper. What is elf paper?
They wrote it on Lembus.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's
That would be even worse.
Lumber spread. More lumber spread. So he's not the king. Do you think Elrond gets anything else out of that?
I think he'll figure it out.
I mean, the way Galadriel has acted here, I think he might be able to put it together. But yeah, I mean, by the paper, all he can see is, oh, this Halbrand, like, this doesn't really timeline make sense. It's the same thing Galadriel did. And I think he's clever enough to see the reaction that she's had towards someone that she literally just spent 6 days writing nonstop to save his life. Like, you don't just do that for anybody. We're saying, like, this is a pretty important person, either for his title or for who he is to her, or both. Like, that's a pretty big sacrifice. And like a day later, well, I guess it's probably a couple weeks. It seems like a week and a half is what they were given by Gil-galad. So, and all of a sudden he's like, right out? Like, you are way past the number for the holy hand grenade. You are right out.
Yep.
And so I would expect that he's going to be able to put it together that there's something more going on. Whether it's the Sauron connection, I don't know, but he'll be able to start piecing things together pretty effectively, I think.
So the rings are made, the 3 elven rings, which in lore says were never touched or marred by Sauron's hand. That was specifically called out in the books and in the lore.
Yep.
It's almost true. My biggest problem is that they were made first.
Right. That's another one of those timeline things. But I think, well, before I go on to justifying that or judging, what do you guys think of the rings themselves?
They look cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. If he wasn't supposed to touch anything according to the lore, it's weird to me that he had his hands on the mithril in general.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's valid. A valid criticism, for sure.
If I'm remembering correctly, 2 of them were gold and 1 of them were silver, which how does that happen if it's all poured from the same exact?
Well, they just needed the gold and the silver from the dagger handle, and I'm sure they would have split those up and melted them down separately.
Okay, I just assumed it was like combined gold and silver together
Gotcha.
along with the mithril. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, I imagine they split them and separated to get them individually is how I just took it. But yeah, I think it's Melissa's making a good point, certainly, that these rings should be some of the last ones that are made. Some of the last ones. And all of the other ones should be made already. And those are all made by our buddy Sauron.
But they're supposed to be made. I understood. I could be wrong. I
don't
thought
know
they
if-
were made there with Celebrimbor.
I think only Celebrimbor is cited as making these.
Oh.
And Sauron made all of the other ones. Is how I remember it. But
See, and I remember it again.
and
I
there's
could be
probably
wrong.
many different things.
And there's people
but
who know more than we do. We know. We
Yeah,
get it.
that's
We're
fine.
not like the best.
But
My
in
thought is
yeah.
that it was Celebrimbor and Sauron when he was in his whatever working together and made the 9 and the 7. And then Sauron made the 1 alone and Celebrimbor made the 3 alone. But
Do
those
elves
others,
sleep?
They rest.
I wonder if Sauron did make the other ones already. And we haven't seen it. He did it while others were not at the forge.
It's possible, but one thing about, and we haven't really seen anything with the other rings yet at all. I don't know that those necessarily have to be made with the mithril like these 3 are. That's where I'm saying that could happen at any time. He could have made them already. He could have had them all and just has been
I agree with that.
having them saved, which is possible. I'm sure we're going to unpack this all next season too, but
Could he have made them in Numenor?
didn't seem like he had a whole lot of time there. After he made that first sword to show his skills, he was like immediately pulled up to Miriel, and then it was like, oh, I guess we're definitely going on this trip to where I didn't want to go, but I think we're definitely doing it. It didn't seem like there was a lot of time in between. It's possible, but they were really protective of him even having access to the smith shop at the start. Like, I don't know.
So my concern is the fact that they thought they were going to be making, first of all, some whatever magic thing they thought mounds of mithril would help. And then it was, we're going to make a crown. The rings seem to be more of an afterthought. So if there are any that have already been created, that feels a little off, seeing as how the rings were like almost like a last minute decision, except again, that was Halbrand. Right? That was Halbrand who had said, you might need something smaller. So I can see that.
Yeah, I take it as, and this is a speculation moving forward, Halbrand Sauron learns a lot from working with Celebrimbor. He takes that knowledge to solidify the idea and then goes to make the next ones, is how I feel the show is going to handle it.
Okay.
That's just my guess.
Fine.
It's kind of the on the nose how this show would do it, is the way I'll say it.
Yes. Okay. Any other thoughts about the rings of power?
They didn't even get named here, but they all have
or
names.
show that they have power. I mean,
Yeah.
it's assumed through the mithril, but
Yeah. And the gems. They were
yes,
special gems too. So,
that they did not talk about
no.
at all.
No.
Okay. Then we hop back to Numenor, and because it's Riley's least favorite place, I'm not going to ask him to do it. Bailey, what happens on Numenor?
Farazan gives Aarion and others the opportunity to draw the king. The king gives a warning about restoring the old ways to Aarion. Tar Palantir takes her to look in the Palantir.
Well, we had to go back to Numenor, I guess. I
Arian's gonna be queen.
think so.
That's what he said.
Well, he thinks he's talking to Muriel.
Oh, true.
He thinks he's talking to his daughter. It's a very similar scene to a scene we just had in another show that we've been talking about, where the wrong person hears the wrong information.
Dying kings
The
need to
dying
be very
king.
careful who they talk to.
Who
Can
they're
I just
blindly talking to.
come
Yeah.
on? They need like a special person, like hospice care, who's always there just in case. Like, oh, I'm gonna write that down to make sure that the people who need to hear that. Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. A little questionable.
I have nothing to say about this scene.
Do we see what she sees? She just looks into the Palantir, right?
Mhm.
And then we never see her again. This actually happens pretty early in the episode.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's all we get.
I mean, they've clearly been making her a much more important character than we would have ever anticipated, is how I feel about it. They've been using her for a lot of things. And
It's almost like we need normal person who lives on Numenor. That's it.
not just, oh, because it's Isildur's sister. Like, have just like another character. Like, I feel like we've done that before, but
Yeah.
it's okay. Whatever. I think she's clearly gonna have a bigger part in season 2. That seems a sure shot for me. Not really here for it, but she's one of my least favorite characters, and I think she's gonna get worse.
Any other thoughts?
Nope.
How many people think Luke is right? Okay.
Unfortunately.
I do want to know what she saw in the Palantir,
Yeah, I do too.
but not enough to actually see any more of her.
I'm gonna go ahead and warn you too. They're gonna have a lot more Numenor next year, next season.
Great.
Well, thankfully, that's not until 2024.
So
That's really far away. Okay. Great. So let's leave Numenor and go halfway back to Middle Earth and jump on a boat.
as the ship sails home, Elendil and Miriel discuss duty. That being faithful means committing even without knowing the cost. Numenor comes into sight where the black flags of mourning are visible.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
Took
what I-
me
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple episodes to realize what that meant.
Me too. And then I guessed.
In the Farazan scene, he talks about we're gonna hang
Yeah.
the black flags
caught that,
when
like,
he
my
dies. So
second
like
or-
and they're like back to back
Yeah.
scenes. So if you weren't, which I try not to listen to Farazan very much, but
Fair.
he specifically says it that when he dies, we're gonna have a thing, carved for him, and we're gonna have the black flags.
To be
hanging
honest,
out.
I wasn't at my most analytical during my first watch of this episode. so-
Sure. Yeah. No, on our first reaction video. Oh man, that was a time.
I like the Elendil and Muriel conversation.
Finally actually being open and honest with each other, like on all of, like, literally really laying their cards out on the table of like, this is who we really are, and we both know it, but we haven't been able to like actually talk about it.
So Bailey and Riley, you guys are show watchers and movie watchers and not necessarily lore watchers. What are your thoughts on what they were talking about who they really are?
I have no idea. I know we've mentioned that what his name is, like friend of Elf or something like that, but other than that, I don't really know.
Yeah, the conversation itself isn't coming back to me right this second, but definitely they both seem to be more sympathetic to the elves than potentially some of their people of Numenor would want them to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's right on the head. You nailed it. That's exactly it. And because what we've seen with, I'll call it the more conservative humans in Numenor, they really are adverse to any elvish, when Galadriel was first brought there, they were up in arms of like, do not bring an elf here. Like, this is not okay. And over time, we've seen that Tar Palantir and Miriel are kind of more like, because he was pushed out because of his love for the elves or his respect for the elves. He was kind of pushed away from ruling. And so she's ruling in his stead right now, but she's got to play that card of being careful about talking about it and hold that. I think we're going to see a lot more of that politic come up soon next season. I think that's going to be there, especially now that we see Elendil and Miriel both getting on the same page of like, no, like legit, like I'm cool with elves. Like, they're fine. They helped us a lot, and we're not ignoring that like everyone else is because we can do it ourselves. There's a lot going into that, but that's, I think, the main tipping point that happens in this scene is they can actually work together for whatever they want to use that information for.
Anything else? We sail into Numenor. There are black flags. The king is dead.
King is dead.
That's all we get.
That's all we get.
Right, ready? Hey, Luke, do you know what time it is?
I do know it's 9:12 p.m. in the one true time zone on November 6th, 2022.
And do you know what that means we're ready for?
That means I think that we're ready for the thing that happens every episode.
Every episode has one.
Every episode has one, and this happens to be this episode's final scene.
Final scene. My iced tea. Good job, iced tea. It's not nearly as fun without the alcohol, but
That's
it's all
okay.
right. Okay. Final scene. Sauron simply walked into Mordor.
I thought one doesn't simply
One
do
is
that.
not-
He's not just one. He's the one.
He's the one who can
The
simply
one?
walk there.
He's it. He's the one who gets to simply walk into Mordor.
I'm the chosen one.
Yes. But he doesn't have, does he have the high ground yet?
I don't think
Chosen
so.
one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was a big fan of the scene.
Yeah.
Because I liked the visual. It was way better than the last time we were in Mordor when the words changed on the screen.
Oh,
So,
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. He's home. Hi, honey.
Honey, I'm home.
Did you notice anything else about the way he looks?
Well, his hair's kind of blown back a little bit. His eyes were a little. Something was going on with his eyes, but I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, in general, there was darker eye makeup. I mean, he was definitely shown as like, okay, Dark Lord, kind of on the verge of that now for
But
sure.
like,
It's like
In
the
a rock
moment,
star kind
like
of
the
a way.
moment you just referred to in Star Wars
Episode 3, Anakin.
when Anakin starts like really looking the part now, and you're like, this very much felt like that. When you just said high ground, I was like, I was thinking about Anakin in this moment for sure.
But he is.
I know.
Ish.
Sort of.
Right?
Yeah, sort of, for sure. But yeah, just visually they've definitely leaned into it to be like, okay, there goes the Rubicon. You know, there's everything is known now, at least for certain people. Galadriel and him. And maybe Elrond.
And us.
And everyone who's watched the show.
That's right. No secrets about Sauron.
But what about Theo?
Bring Wraith.
We'll see.
We'll see.
All right. Any other Mordor thoughts?
No, looks cool.
All right. Episode title accuracy. Alloyed.
I don't love it. I mean, it's fine.
It's too one note.
Yeah, I feel like they
It's
could have.
very just on the nose.
Right. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the other episode titles, but like it just felt like this was just, hey, we have this cool word
Mm-hmm.
and let's use it.
Well, that's how I felt about Adar. Right. Well, I think the titles are getting less all encompassing, but I think I can make a case for it.
Okay.
So, alloyed means to fuse metals, which happened. Okay, whatever. That's like the obvious answer. But it also means to like mix and to unite.
Mm-hmm.
Muriel and Elendil finally did that on an honest ground.
Mhm.
So if you really turn your head and squint, that one could work.
Sure. No, they mix further than they were before.
Same with Nori and the Stranger. I feel like if you look at the symbolic way of interpreting that word of the pairing of two things that may not go together, you can make a case for that in each besides Numenor, because that's just dumb. But everything else has a fusing, even in terms of, yes, the rings themselves, but Celebrimbor, Elrond, and Galadriel are now alloyed as a 3 in a way that everyone else is a 2. So I'm wondering if that balance of power, because 2 divides, we've got a pairing of 2 heading back to Numenor. We've got a pairing of 2 setting off on an adventure, but they're a balance of 3. So I'm wondering if there's something that might come up of that.
And another example would be Halbrand trying to alloy with Galadriel. That was his goal. You know, it didn't come to fruition, but he was trying to unite with her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would have been a power couple, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it really would have been a good, they would have been very successful if they would have worked
Mm-hmm.
together,
Mhm.
certainly.
Or even the three trying to bring on the stranger.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. I'll lean my head and squint and feel a little bit better about it, I
A little
guess.
less reluctant about the title.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it was great.
I-
I'm
there's-
saying I can justify it.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
was a title.
It titled this episode.
It served that purpose. Okay. Accuracy of the episode description. Season 1 finale. New alliances are forged.
Yep and yep. 2 for 2.
I think in the forged
And-
alliances
and
forged.
Forged.
Yeah.
Look at them playing on the same whatever you want to call theme. There you go. All right, let's do favorite or least favorite thing. Let's start with Riley.
My favorite thing, I kind of have two. I really liked the goodbye from Nori and her dad. That was pretty awesome. And then after talking through it, I really appreciate the Galadriel background stuff that we got in terms of her relationship with Sauron and what it turns into in the movies. Like, it gave that scene that I used to be afraid of as a kid like way more context, and I thought that was really cool. So yeah, those are probably the two big ones for me.
Were you more afraid of that Galadriel scene from the movie or Bilbo reaching after the ring?
Ooh, that
Did I
probably
pick- I was
Bilbo.
gonna say I think I picked the two
Yeah.
creepiest for sure.
Bailey, favorite or least favorite?
I'll say my favorite was Sauron infiltrating Galadriel's head and just trying to work her over and get her on his side to see things how he sees them. And he was so close until he said it was all about ruling. So yeah, I enjoyed that, and just Galadriel's dress. It was like A plus 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 plus. Where do I buy it?
Which one? The green one?
The green one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Luke.
My favorite thing is that I was right. And I like the way that they unveiled it throughout. I mean,
That they showed you were right.
and they just laid it on thick. Luke was right for so long. No, I really did like the true way that they did that. All in her head, the leading up to it, with him doing the alloying stuff. Like, I just liked the reveal of Sauron, like solidifying that that's really what it is. And I thought they did for what they're going with. I thought they did a good job with it. And it really leans into the Sauron the Deceiver name, right? Because, yeah, I'm sure a lot of people were duped for a long time, even in this episode, like Melissa was saying. And that's fine. That's great. It's a great reveal, I think, to when his voice changes and he says that I've been here since the first sound. And I don't know. I just really enjoyed that. And I like like what Bailey was just saying, the deception techniques he uses on her in that moment too. It was just really well done, and that was my favorite thing, maybe of the past couple episodes. To be honest, it was enjoyable for me.
My favorite thing is still Halbrand. I'm going to be Team Sauron now. Sorry, folks. I have bought in hook, line, and sinker. I will happily be like a lemming and jump off that cliff. I'm fine with that because he's been the best character in this entire show. Love him. So I'm in because I like a good bad guy. And I'm going to connect it to another show that did the same thing to me, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. My favorite character on there, besides, Coulson, my favorite character was Grant Ward. I loved Grant Ward. Loved Grant Ward. And he ended up being like the biggest, evilest bad guy. And they ended up keeping him on the show for longer than they probably should have, just because he was so loved. Yeah. And I was like, fine, I don't care. He can do whatever he wants. Because it was such a good twist, and that's how this hit me. So nope, Team Sauron.
I mean, what you just said there, if every story has to have a really good villain, it's better when you love the villain already,
Yes.
and then before you realize the fall, or whatever that is. I mean, that's how you create effective, dichotomy in the way you're thinking about it. It's like, man, but I know where he's coming from, but I know he's bad, but I still like him, kind of thing. Like it's a well designed.
I understand his side.
Right. Like Thanos,
I was thinking it the whole time.
because someone said that earlier already, right? I mean, or another. You said Ultron was what you'd said, but go ahead.
I mean, I don't need to get too deep into this because it could put me in a bad spot. But I love Thanos. I think he's my favorite villain of all time. He is trying to save the world in his own manner and going to every end to accomplish that goal, which he thinks is the right thing to do. I just love him.
I mean, he's got good intentions.
He thinks they are. Absolutely. Yeah.
A great villain needs to have a good purpose,
Yeah.
and he's got a great one. I'm in.
I was also going to say, technically speaking, based on what I know of the timeline and what happens in Middle Earth, right now is a pretty good time to jump on Team Sauron.
I mean, I'm gonna have a good run for it for a while.
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident. It may not last for ages, but that's okay. At least it outlasts.
All right. So our team is all big fans of Sauron right now. We are. Sounds like we are fully backing his Kickstarter project.
I'm sticking with Nori and the Stranger though.
Okay.
Sure.
All
Well, they don't know anything about each other yet, so they're not
Yeah, I
at,
know.
at all. So
I need
that's
him to
that's
get a
fine.
name.
Yeah.
Preferably not Gandalf. No, just me.
I still don't want to, but it
Gray
definitely is.
Man.
Bluey.
How about Mithrandir?
Ugh. Olorian.
How about-
whatever it is.
Stormcrow.
Oh, all right. I added a section, and I would like to. It's called "Questions or Predictions for Season 2." So, I don't want to open it up for like a million, but either what is your big question that still hasn't been answered, or what is a prediction you have? And I will go first because I already have one. I'll give you a second to think because I just sprung this on you. Mine is, when does Isildur come back to life? We have left him burning under a house. Sauron has left and come back. So at some point we need to see if he's alive. Our prediction was he would either come at the beginning of this episode or the end of this episode, and
Didn't
he
happen.
didn't happen. So that's my big question wondering. All right. Anyone ready?
I'm still thinking through.
Bailey? Bailey got one?
I mean, honestly, the Isildur stuff was a question I had all throughout this episode of like, when are we going to see him? Why haven't we seen him? We got to the end of the episode and we still didn't see him. Other characters, I don't know. I want to see where we go with the dwarves next season, if we go anywhere with the dwarves. I'm enjoying that so far, so I would like to see a bit more.
I predict that the other rings are going to be made, and Sauron is going to be deceiving a lot of important people for quite a while. I'm not trying to give anything away, but he's going to be pretty successful coming up here for a little while,
Yay.
for sure. And he's going to do it with good intentions.
And his big brown eyes.
And I don't even know if it's going to be the same actor the whole time.
Oh, am I not?
So just be prepared for that, I think.
It's fine.
Yeah. I think that we're gonna see some cool stuff in Rune when Nori and our buddy get there. The stranger. I'm excited to see that. There was something else I was gonna say, but it's escaping me right now.
Okay.
So that's okay.
Riley.
Yeah. My big question is, what do the rings actually do? Like, what's powerful about them? Like, I still am having a hard time grasping like what Mithril is actually doing and what the other gems are, and like how they're actually special.
Sure.
And I want to know more about like how like the elves are dying and how it's going to be fixed because of the like it just doesn't really like it's all this big hoopla, but it doesn't make any sense and it's not like spelled out for me. So
I'll tell you, even in general, that's kind of always been the rings do a thing.
yeah,
Okay.
they better blast like
They're
nature
powerful.
rays.
It's like the Captain Planet rings.
Yeah.
Didn't
With
they have-
our powers combined.
There you go.
My prediction is that Nori will save the stranger's life more than once.
That's a good prediction.
I'd buy into that for
Yeah.
sure.
Awesome. All right. So, heading us off into the realm of words are not working so well. As we wind down and go on hiatus, that's what I
There
was
you
looking
go.
for. I want to recommend that people who are watching the show or listening to the show check out another Drawbridge Media show. We have lots and lots to choose from, and we've talked about almost all of them on here for you to recommend. But one I don't remember if we've mentioned or not is the podcast that fights and F words, which is a rewatch. Bailey's laughing at me. A rewatch of Outlander with Bailey and Abby, which had a few really good episodes of the first season. I think you got the first season in, correct?
I think it was half the
Part
season.
of the first season.
Yeah, like 3/4 of the way through.
Perfect. And so it's a good sampler of what that can be if you're an Outlander fan. Go ahead and check that out.
And
you
I'm
can-
trying to convince them to get it going again here
I
shortly.
maybe remember you saying
I'm
that.
sure that some point between the end of this season that you're currently listening to and the beginning of our next season, which will be at least a year in the future, there will probably be some more episodes to listen to.
Oh, that sounds like commitment right there.
You heard it here, folks. So what I'm hearing is we will have more episodes.
Yes,
Um,
that show's coming back.
Yeah, I knew you were doing that, Luke, which is why I brought it up. You're welcome. Okay. Who are you? Where can people find you? And what are your last thoughts as we wrap up season 1? Bailey, I'm shooting over you first.
I am Bailey. You can find me on Twitter at RiddleWrites. And my final thought is perhaps with all this vast time we have between seasons, maybe I'll read the books. That's where we're going.
All right. Riley.
Yeah, I'm Riley. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at HoagieOnRye. And my final thoughts are I really enjoyed most of this show, and I don't want to say something that will like put this show in a negative light, but there are things that I think I would have enjoyed more had I not had so much context around things.
Like
Sometimes
for us, talking
Yeah.
about,
Uh,
I was afraid of that this whole time.
but it's
too,
not. It
for
didn't
sure.
really ruin anything for me, but like specifically the whole. I think I would have been like all on board with Halbrand this whole time. Like, and I probably would have been totally fooled.
Mhm.
I think I would have been 100% fooled. But because of what I learned about Sauron and his character through this show, I think that it was very predictable. But that doesn't mean it was bad. Like, I think I would have totally been fooled. So, I'm excited for season 2. I'm excited to get into more like unknown territory and learn about Rune and places that I've never even heard of. So I'm excited for that.
All right. Luke?
I'm Luke. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at LukeFerocious. Final thought is, yeah, the whole idea behind this podcast is something that Melissa and I have wanted to do for a long time. This is a different version of it than we always anticipated starting with, but the way we've run all of our other shows, this was a tough one to find a balance of giving too much information to people that don't know, being Riley and Bailey, who haven't read much context, of the actual stories, but have seen the movies, and being able to actually talk about, it was tough to find a balance on this one because it was so open. And I'm sure there were things that you were influenced by. Like, doesn't surprise me. We tried, but even then, we were also
But
like,
most of the
we
time
also
I
just
asked
have
for
to,
it.
we just have to talk about it. And
Yeah.
so either way, I've enjoyed this show. I've enjoyed our podcast a lot. in general, I went into this show, Rings of Power, with very little expectations of. I didn't look anything up ahead of time as to what specifically they're doing, what limitations the writers have, anything like that. What can they pull from for information? And I've enjoyed the show. Yeah, there are problems with it. Yeah, I mean, I can't stand some of the things that they've changed, but I'm also just deciding to be okay with it because I want to enjoy the show, because I want to have a show to watch. And this is a fun world to be in, so I'm glad we have it, and I'm enjoying it for what they're doing with it. I've learned to get better with not expecting things to be so hyper close to the text. Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire? He asked calmly.
That one you get to keep being upset about.
I will never not be upset about that
Right.
one. But through that, I've been more lenient on other things. And so maybe I'm too easy on the show at times, for sure, but I enjoy it. I can separate the book text from the shows, from the movies, and enjoy it further. I just like being in the world and enjoying it. You know, if you loved the animated Lord of the Rings from the 70s and you can't stand this, like, what are you doing? Like, those are fun, but they make no sense. Like, fundamentally, it doesn't make any sense. So I don't know. It just bothers me to see so many people ripping on this, of it being so terrible. And I can respect that. But I think their expectations were very different than mine going into it, is what I can leave that at.
And I'm Melissa. You can find me at mcrowley522. My final thought is, the first time I watched each episode, I've really enjoyed each episode. And the second time I watched each episode, I was disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird. Like, every episode, I was like, wow, this was great. And the second time through for each one, I was like, oh, I'm bored. Not all the time through every episode, but there were like stretches of time that I didn't care about, which is weird for me in doing a show like this. But in my defense, I don't ever do the TV shows.
This is your first,
Ever.
isn't it? Yeah.
This is my first podcast about not a book, lots of books. So part of me had a hard time finding my own way in, because I'm used to knowing the source material really, really well. And I'm not saying I don't know The Lord of the Rings, but these stories are original stories set in the world, pulling some context.
Mm-hmm.
I can't pick up a text and read what it's supposed to be, because it's so far left of anything that's on paper. There's not enough on paper to tell this story. So that was hard for me to navigate in general, just in my brain, not in a I don't believe you kind of way, but just I like to be able to pull up my book and open up my book and go to my book page and say, he said calmly.
And he did.
And he
definitely did.
did. So it's things like that I'm finding the balance between, how do I talk about it when I don't know it as well, because it is new, it is brand new content, and yet it's so far left of the source material. So how do I find balance? I enjoyed the world. I liked the world that was in. I like Warrior Princess Galadriel. I thought she was a good spin on that character in a way that makes her interesting to watch, as opposed to just being this ethereal, like boring, perfect mannered elf queen.
Mm-hmm.
My final thought after that is, where's her husband?
Right.
Because right, I know there's a pin in that, but at some point
She lost him.
Lost.
She lost him.
he's with an end wife, and I
the
know that.
Endwives, yeah.
I'm just, at some point, right, he's gonna come back.
I would expect so.
Yeah. Okay. You, all of you out there, can become a patron and support the show and all of our shows. Learn more at patreon.com and /stayimaginary. For more ways that you can help with all of our shows here at Drawbridge Media, check us out at thepodcast.com/support us. We are on Twitter for the moment at Wanders and Lost. Also on Instagram at Wanders and Is Lost, and an email at wandersandislost@gmail.com. Make sure you subscribe, like, rate, and leave comments on iTunes and on YouTube, where you can hit that notification bell every time we go live, because we live record all of these for you. And until next time,
Stay imaginary.
thanks.